Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are opening up a genuine historical cold case. It's about a people who built powerful kingdoms, who went toe-to-toe with the might of Rome, and then just seemingly vanished from the pages of history. You have to understand, for over 1,000 years, starting way back in the Iron Age, the Illyrians were a huge deal. They weren't a single nation, but this incredible mosaic of tribes that dominated a massive part of the Balkans. They were fierce warriors, skilled sailors, and hardy shepherds who really shaped the ancient world around the Adriatic. But after a series of brutal, bloody wars, really brutal, their lands were completely swallowed up by the Roman Empire. And as the centuries rolled by, their name, their unique language, their very identity, it just slowly began to fade from the official records, almost like they were erased. But is that the whole story? Did an entire people really just vanish into thin air? Or did they survive, hiding in plain sight, with their legacy carried on by a modern nation? Well, that is the central mystery we're diving into today. So let's get into it. So, where do we even begin our investigation? Well, we start with our most important witness, the Albanian language itself. This language is a total outlier, a unique, isolated branch on the Indo-European family tree. And, it holds some absolutely incredible clues, kind of like linguistic fossils. Okay, so check this out. The first layer of evidence comes from words borrowed from the ancient Greek colonies that were dotted along the coast. Now, what's so crucial about this is that this contact happened before the Romans ever showed up. This tells us the language was already there, living and breathing and borrowing words from its neighbors. Then, of course, the next layer is Latin, which makes sense after centuries of Roman rule. You get words like condoing from the Latin cantare. But here's the kicker. This isn't proof that Latin replaced the local language. Actually, it's proof of the exact opposite. It shows the language was strong enough to survive, to just borrow words from the new empire, not get wiped out by it. And the story doesn't stop there. Later on, around the 6th century AD, we see a new layer of Slavic words coming in during the Great Migrations. Again, this just proves the language was still around, still being spoken in those same areas, ready to pick up new words from the new arrivals. It's like a perfect chronological footprint. But here's the real clincher. Once you peel back all those borrowed layers, the Greek, the Latin, the Slavic, you find a core vocabulary. I'm talking about the most basic words for family, for nature, for life itself. And these words, they weren't borrowed from anyone. They were inherited directly from Proto-Indo-European, the ancient mother tongue of nearly all European languages. This suggests an unbroken line stretching way, way back into deep history. All right, so the language tells a really compelling story, but what about the physical evidence? Let's switch gears from linguistic forensics and look at the material witnesses, the clues left behind in stone, in the soil, and even in fabric. What archaeologists have found is pretty incredible. Key Illyrian sites like their ancient capital Skodra, which is now modern Shkodra, and other settlements were, get this, continuously inhabited, from the Illyrian kings, right through the Roman and Byzantine empires, all the way to today. It's not like the lights ever went out. The places were never abandoned, they just changed. And then you get these wow moments, like this one. On the left, you see a stone carving of an Illyrian man from over 2,000 years ago, and he's wearing this very distinctive cap. And on the right, that's the traditional Albanian pliss, a felt cap still worn today. The resemblance is just uncanny. It's a powerful visual argument for cultural survival. And it's not just objects, it's also about a way of life. This practice, transhumans, basically moving your livestock up to the high mountains in the summer and back down to the valleys in the winter, was the absolute bedrock of Illyrian life. And guess what? It's also a foundational part of traditional Albanian mountain culture. It suggests a continuous shepherding lifestyle, a rhythm of life perfectly attuned to the land, passed down for millennia. Okay, so we've got language and we've got artifacts. But what about the stuff you can't touch? Let's look at the intangible evidence, what some people call the social DNA. These are the unwritten laws and customs that governed life in the Albanian mountains for centuries, far from the reach of any empire. So this is the Kanun, Albania's ancient customary law. Now, even though it was only written down much later, its core ideas, this fierce code of honor, the sacred vow or bese, and the whole system of blood feuds are clearly pre-Christian. And they sound an awful lot like the descriptions of Illyrian tribal society that we have from old Greek and Roman writers. The backbone of this whole system was the fis, which is the tribe or clan. It was organized by bloodlines, run by a council of elders, and it stayed the main social reality in the Albanian highlands well into the 20th century. I mean, think about that for a second. This ancient tribal system survived in Europe right into the modern age. That's wild. So, we've laid out the evidence from language, archaeology, and social codes, but let's get to the big question. Why does this 2,000-year-old mystery, this connection to so-called ancient ghosts, still matter so much in the Balkans today? While for some people in the region, digging into these deep historical connections is a source of kinship. It's a way of feeling a shared identity, a sense of being ancient neighbors with really deep roots. But, it is not that simple. For many others, these ancient links feel weak or just irrelevant. They would argue that modern national identities, shaped by much more recent history, are way more important. And this really gets to the heart of how incredibly complex identity is. We're talking about centuries of interaction with so many different neighbors: Slavs, Greeks, Turks, Italians. It's woven this rich, complicated cultural tapestry, and that single line of ancient descent is just one thread among many. This comment, I think, really sums up the power of these historical stories. The narrative of having shared origins, then being separated by empires and migrations, but ultimately surviving, that plays a huge role in how people see themselves and their neighbors, even today. So you see, this debate over Illyrian-Albanian continuity is so much more than some dusty academic argument. We're talking about more than 2,000 years of history, language, and culture, and it really touches the very core of what national identity is all about. So to wrap it up, the case for this continuity really rests on three very strong pillars. First, you've got the unique and ancient structure of the Albanian language. Second, there's the unbroken chain of settlements and artifacts in the archaeological record. And third, the absolutely remarkable survival of these ancient social codes and traditions. Because in the end, this whole investigation into a lost people goes beyond just ancient history. It's about how the stories we choose to tell about our past, stories about our origins, our survival, our heritage, are what we use to define who we are, right here in the present. And that's really the question that sits at the heart of this whole mystery. It's a question that connects the silent stones of ancient Illyria to the loud, passionate debates of today. So what do you think? Is it the past we get, or the story we tell?